Good morning. That was a beautiful way to start our day. Thank you so much, choir. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. My name is Kathy Disney, and I am a worship associate of this church. I am joined on the chancel this morning by worship leader Becky Sate. Over the last few years, the way that we have met has often changed. But whether in person, on Zoom, or a YouTube live stream, or some way of being that we cannot yet imagine, worshiping together is a chance to deepen our connection with the sources of meaning in our lives and to proclaim who we are and what we are about, throwing open the doors of our congregation and proclaiming the radical love and welcome that is at the heart of our faith. The Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and our world. We have a big vision here, and we know that creating a loving community begins with welcome. So whether this is your first time here or your 500th, if you come here hopeful or heartbroken, whatever your age, gender, skin color, whomever you love, you are welcome here. And now, a little recent history lesson. In January of 2021, our board appointed the Dismantling White Supremacy Task Force. And among the many other things that it did, it launched an audit of lay leaders and then a full congregational survey to better understand how our congregants and friends perceived and understood white supremacy. A surprise finding from the congregational survey had to do with developing a land acknowledgement for our church. Fewer respondents reported feeling neutral about this than any other question. Over 80% felt it was at least somewhat important, and over 60% felt it was quite or essentially important to be more regularly acknowledge the land our church was built on as having belonged to Native Americans. Around the same time, about 50 of our church members were participating in Beloved Conversations, a program for people seeking to embody racial justice as a spiritual practice. Land acknowledgments were in the air. The University of Nebraska and the City of Lincoln began meetings with newly written acknowledgments and posted them on their websites. Our church wanted to bring forth a land acknowledgment statement that was more than just words. After the very successful Indigenous Programming Month in July of 2022, a task force was ready to talk about what it wanted to include in our land acknowledgement and what it wanted to exclude. The full congregation was invited into the discussion. 2 weeks later, the congregation was invited back for a review of the initial draft. There was another review and revision before our minister, the Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair, read our land acknowledgement for the first time at the beginning of Sunday service on September 18th, 2022. Our land acknowledgement from the beginning has been seen as organic as our relationship with the Oto-Missouria and local Native folks. It will change and evolve. Periodically, we will remind ourselves of our land acknowledgement on Sunday mornings. This morning, we will be reading a shortened version as a responsive reading. The full text of the land acknowledgement will be found on our website. The part in the slide for you will come after I have said my part, so watch and wait. Here we go. We acknowledge the land and the people who have called this place home for thousands of years. The Oto-Missouria, Omaha, Ponca, Kansa, and Pawnee have lived here at one time. Many others have visited to collect salt at the local salt basin, Nikisthe, by which this area continues to be known, is the Omaha word for salt water. We thank them for all their good care of this sacred ground. While we cannot change the past, we are committed to right relationship with our Native neighbors. We value their contribution to our community's vitality and diversity. Our commitment is to action. We pledge to show up in support of local and national programs and measures demand redress for lands taken, that offer justice for harm committed, and that seek to promote self-determination and equity for all peoples. Thank you. And now let us continue into worship with our chalice lighting words by Becky Sate. Mindful of the gifts our world showers upon us each day, may the light of our chalice guide us to show our gratitude with acts of justice and healing. Our first hymn is going to be number 1064 in the Teal hymnal, Blue Boat Home. Our accompaniment for this time is something rather special. It is a video made by Jack Forbes Wilson with artwork from children in our RGL program. I think this was done about last year, the last couple of years. So if you will rise in body and spirit, but wait to sing until you see the words.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So it is now time for all ages. So if there are any young ones or young at heart who would like to come forward and hear the story, I would love to have you here. Today's story is called Sky Woman Falling, as written in Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Krimmerer. In the beginning, there was the sky world. She fell like a maple seed, pirouetting on an autumn breeze. A column of light streamed from a hole in the sky world, marking her path with only darkness had been before. It took her a long time to fall. In fear, or maybe hope, she clutched a bundle tightly in her hand. Hurtling downward, she saw only dark water below. But in that emptiness, there were many eyes, gazing up at the sudden shaft of light. They saw there was a small object, a mere dust mote in the beam. As it grew closer, they could see that it was a woman, arms outstretched, long black hair billowing behind her as she spiraled toward them. The geese nodded at one another and rose together from the water in a wave of goose music. She felt the beat of their wings as they flew beneath to break her fall. Far from the only home she'd ever known, she caught her breath at the warm embrace of soft feathers as they gently carried her downward. And so it began. The geese could not hold the woman above the water for much longer, so they called a council to decide what to do. Resting on their wings, she saw them all gather: loons, otters, swans, beavers, fish of all kinds. A great turtle floated in their midst and offered his back for her to rest upon. Gratefully, she stepped from the goose wings onto the dome of his shell. The others understood that she needed land for her home and discussed how they might serve her need. The deep divers among them had heard of mud at the bottom of the water and agreed to go find some. Loon dove first, but the distance was too far, and after a long while, he surfaced with nothing to show for his efforts. One by one, the other animals offered to help: otter, beaver, sturgeon. But the depth and the darkness and the pressures were too great for even the strongest of swimmers. They returned gasping for air, with their heads ringing. Some did not return at all. Soon, only the little muskrat was left, the weakest diver of all. He volunteered to go, while the others looked on doubtfully. His small legs flailed as he worked his way downward, and he was gone a very long time. They waited and waited for him to return, fearing the worst for their relative. And before long, a stream of bubbles rose with a small, limp body of the muskrat. He had given his life to aid this helpless human. But then the others noticed that in his paw was tightly clenched, and when they opened it, there was a small handful of mud. Turtle said, "Here, put it on my back and I will hold it." Sky Woman bent and spread the mud with her hands across the shell of the turtle. Moved by the extraordinary gifts of the animals, she sang in thanksgiving and then began to dance, her feet caressing the earth. The land grew as she danced her thanks from the daub of mud on Turtle's back until the whole world was made, not by Sky Woman alone, but from the alchemy of all the animals' gifts coupled with her deep gratitude. Together they formed what we know today as Turtle Island, our home. Like any good guest, Sky Woman had not come empty-handed. The bundle was still clutched in her hand. When she had toppled from the hole in the sky world, she had reached out to grab onto the tree of life that grew there. In her grasp were branches, fruits and seeds and all kinds of plants. These she scattered onto the new ground and carefully tended each one until the world turned from brown to green. Sunlight streamed through the hole from the sky world, allowing the seeds to flourish. Wild grasses, flowers, trees, and medicines spread everywhere. And now that the animals too had plenty to eat, many came to live with her on Turtle Island. And that is the end of our story. If the children would like to go to their classrooms, they are dismissed.
Okay. I think everybody knows my name is Joellen Polzine, and I'm one of the old women on the Board of Trustees. But I'm still alive and kicking for at least a couple more weeks. How many here know what's going on in 1 week? How many know what's going on in 2 weeks? Well, soon you are all going to know, because I'm going to tell you. In 1 week, our bidding for the auction stops. So you have 1 week left, and if you're on the ball next Sunday, a few more hours to bid on over 150 items. So get on quick, because a lot of them are sold out, and more are selling out every minute. So I think it can wait till 11, but then you better get on this. And in 2 weeks, what's going to happen? Not just in our church, but in our whole community, our religious community throughout Lincoln and Lancaster County. Any guesses? Oh, see how smart you are. It's the Nehemiah, Justice in Action, and it's on Thursday, May 2nd at St. Mark's. Have you all put that on your calendars? Good. If you have not, do you promise you will? What good boys and girls you are. Okay, please join the members of the Board of Trustees and the Interim Ministry Search Committee next Sunday, April 28th, right here after service for a second listening session about our future. The goal of the session is to answer questions and listen to concerns as we proceed with the interim ministry process. So we're not going to be discussing the settled ministry process. That comes later. Next week is just the interim ministry process. So you just have to hold on if you can't wait to discuss the settled, because it's not appropriate next week. So try to behave. It's hard, I know. I know better than you. It's very hard to behave. Please join us during coffee hour after service. And the committees on the outreach cluster will have information tables, and you can chat with them. And you can talk as long as you want. No limit. Thank you.
Thanks, Joellen. Just to add a little bit to that, I understand that the Outreach Cluster has also provided treats for us for our coffee hour. So please stay and have a cookie or a brownie and chat with them about the good work that they are doing on behalf of our church. A central part of our service is the time we join together as a community to mark the moments of our lives. We share with one another our joys, our sorrows, the events that mark the steps on our journey. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for all, remembered by all. We share those threads, and then they are woven together with those of others in our community. Our joys are shared and magnified. We are comforted in our sorrows. I invite you to type into the chat or speak into this shared space your name or the name of another you wish to be remembered in sorrow.
Joan Anderson.
Joan Anderson.
Marilyn.
Marilyn. Liz. Orly. Michelle. In the chat, Amy Miller has written, ailing mom. Jean McAlevey? Jane McAlevey, thank you. Joy is also a part of our shared experience. So I invite you to type into the chat or to speak into this shared space your name or the name of another you wish to be remembered in joy.
Rob and Vicky, who are visiting us from Ontario, Canada.
Rob and Vicky, who are visiting from Ontario, Canada.
Pedro, Sylvia, Selene, and their new baby and little brother, Jesse.
Allison's friends who have a new baby.
Jackie Egan for yeoman's work in putting together the 7x7 dinners.
Jackie Egan and others who helped put together the 4x4 dinners, who in this case were 7x7 dinners. Everyone bidding on the auction.
My son turning 60.
BJ's son is turning 60.
Cool. Speaking of the auction, thank you to Karen, Barbara, and Julie for all their work on putting it together.
Karen, Barbara, and Julie for putting the auction together and the hard work that's gone into that.
All the flowers greeting us.
All the flowers greeting us for spring.
Grandson turning 21, a full adult.
Joanna's grandson turning 21, a full adult. I would add my joy at this pulpit decoration down here. If you don't have it, if you have a chance after the service while you're getting your cookies, look at this. It is remarkable. Put together, I believe, in honor of Earth Day.
Witnessing my first bee of the season in my pollinator garden.
Oh.
Witnessing the first bee of the season in the pollinator garden.
Planting my garden yesterday.
Planting gardens. We know that there are some joys and some sorrows that are yet unspoken but still deeply felt. Let us hold a moment of silence for everything that is unspoken. Thank you for your presence. And now, if you will rise as you are able, we will sing hymn number 123 in the gray hymnal, Spirit of Life. Each week, we take up a collection to support the work of this church and our partners in the community. We do this because just as we all grow from our participation in this community, we all give back through our time, our talent, and our treasure. To give, you can text UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. That's UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. During the next piece by our wonderful choir, the offering will be gratefully received. Thank you again, choir. It's beautiful. Our reading this morning is called "The Turtle Mothers Have Come Ashore to Ask About an Unpaid Debt." It is edited from a guest essay by Robin Wall Kimmerer from the New York Times, September 22nd, 2023. She writes, "Each summer, I teach at the Cranberry Lake Biological Station, a remote wilderness field school in the Adirondacks. It is a community of scientists and students surrounded by rich forests and glittering lakes, where bears and loons are our neighbors. We may think we're learning about wildlives, but in fact, we are learning from them. One of our best teachers returns every summer just after the solstice, clambering her way up a steep bluff from the lake under cover of darkness to lay her eggs in the warm, open sand of our volleyball court. With powerful bear-like claws, she flings the sand aside. Her sharp snouted mouth open and gasping for breath, she rests for a minute. Then she digs some more with fierce maternal commitment and utter disregard for the students who surround her, snapping photos as eggs like leathery ping pong balls leave her body. When she has covered them safely, entrusting them to the earth, she makes her way back to the water. She and I, we go back a long time to a story we both remember, a creation story of my people. It is a story how the troubled water was cleansed by a great flood, and our new home was made on the back of a turtle who gave herself so that we might live. As predictable as the solstice, this mother comes every year. We know her by the little notch marked on the edge of her shell. There are hundreds of sandy places for snapping turtle nests, but for some reason, this one chooses to bring her offspring to us. Our students are thrilled to witness this. It is a highlight of their field biology summer. But they also want to play volleyball. So the herpetology class carefully unearths the eggs and with loving care takes them to another site the students have prepared and measured to be sure it's a good place for the incubation. Warm, dry sand, safe from predators, so that the baby snatchers will hatch. A few years ago, there was a second mother in just the same spot in our volleyball court. That had never happened before. The next day, there was another and another. One day, there were two basking right on the welcome mat of the camp headquarters. In all, more than a dozen snapping turtles came among us in a dozen ways. A deluge of turtles. As a scientist, we were asking, why? Why would reclusive, solitary beings struggle up a rocky cliff and walk into a community of 100 humans? Why did all these turtles come to us in unprecedented numbers to do their most important thing? When our students went to find suitable transplant sites for the repeated batches of eggs, we found one answer. The sand spits the turtles' favor were underwater from unusually heavy rains. As the lake level rose, they had to seek higher ground. It seemed to me that the snapping turtles had become climate refugees. That's the thing that haunts me. I think the turtles headed for higher ground with a kind of desperation to ask us to pay attention, to see that we teetered on the brink of climate catastrophe with our plant and animal relatives disappearing in waves of extinction. It is no longer a matter of small acts of stewardship, not enough to tenderly move the eggs from one place to another when there are no more places for them to go. The earth asks that we give our considerable gifts in return for all we've been given and in return for all we have taken. We are called to a movement made of equal parts outrage and love.
Good morning. My name is Becky Sate, and I'm a longtime member of this congregation. As many of you know, although I care deeply about a whole host of issues, I put most of my energy into climate change action because that is the existential crisis of our time, and our decisions right now are crucial. I return again and again to the wisdom I find in Raman Wall Kimmerer. The heart of her message is the importance of both gratitude and reciprocity. In her retelling of the Haudenosaunee creation story, our world was formed by the interconnected care of the water animals, the gratitude of Sky Woman, and the plant gifts she carried in return. That we as humans are totally dependent on the many gifts our planet showers on us each day is a given. We sing of golden mornings, but maybe not often enough. Do I begin each day with an overwhelming sense of gratitude? I wish I could say I do. I'm more consciously aware of those gifts in the spring. I revel in the procession of flowering bulbs and the glorious blooming trees. I'm a gardener, and as I plunge my hands into the soil, I sometimes do pay attention enough to think of the world passing through them. According to a researcher at Oregon State University, a single teaspoon, 1 gram, of rich garden soil can hold up to 1 billion bacteria, several yards of fungal filaments, several thousand protozoas, and scores of nematodes. Just think of that in 1 teaspoon. Those tiny seeds and seedlings I plant in my modest 12 by 20 garden can provide some of the vegetables Shudda and I eat for the whole year. How's that for a miracle? And what about the miracle of green plants? They take such common things, water, carbon dioxide, some minerals, and transform the energy of the sun into food, medicine, and fiber for all other planet dwellers, while giving off the oxygen we breathe. Daily miracle, yes. So I'll give us a moment for you to conjure up what in our natural world you are most grateful for this morning. And I did hear some of that in the joys and sorrows. So just let's take a moment. I particularly like the juxtaposition of the Sky Woman creation story and the anecdote of the snapping turtles at the biological station. Kimmerer has been telling the Sky Woman creation story for a long time, but in her recent presentations, she is following it with her deluge of turtles. Before, when I thought about the turtle bearing our home, Turtle Island, on its back, I imagined a lovely sea turtle. But perhaps a snapping turtle is a better messenger. Kimmerer constantly reminds us to pay attention and learn from the more than human beings with whom we share our world. So what lessons can we find when we regard the common snapping turtle? They do have a reputation for being nasty, but this is an exaggeration, though they don't suffer human interactions kindly most of the time. They've been around for over 90 million years, are found throughout much of North America, and at this point are definitely not endangered. They evolved here and make the most of the place where they find themselves. Snapping turtles are adaptable and tenacious. They are omnivores and will eat whatever is available, even dead stuff. They surely aren't pretty, but despite what they look like, they are amazingly vulnerable, particularly when they're young. Yes, they have a large shell, but it isn't big enough for them to hide in. Their long, flexible neck, their stocky legs and tail are all exposed. They spend long periods of time resting and can make use of low levels of dissolved oxygen. So I'll give you a few moments to think about lessons you might draw from the snapping turtle, or maybe a different animal or plant of your choice. I trust you are well aware of the interlocking crises we face. Some call it the 4 E's: ecology, energy, economy, and equity. We know we are facing an astounding loss of biodiversity. Although estimates of extinction levels vary like crazy, current rates are at least 1,000 times of historical ones. And we don't even have a good handle on how many species share our Earth with us. Fossil fuels have allowed an unprecedented standard of living for many, especially in the global north, but at a very high cost. We are struggling with how to deal with those costs that have often fallen most heavily on the marginalized citizens and nations of our planet. Our economy is based on belief in continual progress and growth, but we know that we live on a finite planet, and continual growth is not possible, that some have benefited from that growth far more than others, and that our definition of progress needs to shift dramatically. And we know that wage and wealth inequity between the rich and the poor, both in the US and globally, is growing to dangerous levels. We are bombarded with evidence of these crises. We also know that many solutions are already available to us if we made full use of them. If we look, we also have many, many examples of people imagining a transformed world and working to make their dreams a reality. Shudder and I have been watching the PBS series A Brief History of the Future, and though it often seems disjointed to me, I'm encouraged by some of the stories held there. 2 from the second episode were fun to think about. One was about Boyan Slat, a teenager who went scuba diving and found more trash than fish. So he started dreaming up solutions and didn't give up after several failed tries. He is now gathering plastic from the Great Pacific Garbage Dump, the largest accumulation of trash in the world's oceans, twice the size of Texas, with about 250 million pounds of trash. He, or as I imagine his company, has developed a long U-shaped barrier that is dragged very slowly so it does not trap fish, and funnels the trash to a collector. The contents are sorted for recycling, and they find that half of the trash is fishing nets. They've figured out a way to wash and shred the nets to make pellets that are building blocks for other products, and these finance the operation. They've also put interceptors in 11 rivers to reduce the amount of trash going into the ocean. Another story was about a business that can raise 1 million pounds of mycelial blocks in 10 days on 1 acre of vertical mushroom farming. They've turned these blocks into packaging material, a leather-like substance, and bacon. Yes, bacon. They even hope to make living buildings from this material. These dreamers and doers remind us that everything we now take for granted seemed impossible at one time, and that many, many possibilities for the transformation of our world exist. I've been an active volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby since 2012. This Earth Month, the challenge for CCL volunteers is to have 25,000 conversations about climate change, since many more of us need to talk about this topic, and especially let our leaders know that we support action now. Last week, during the international call, we had a presentation by a man from a firm called Potential Energy. They've done a great deal of research on what works when talking about climate, and they advised us to talk from heart to head to hands, from what we love to what we know, and then to what we can do. It seems like good advice, and I'm trying to do that here. They also advised us to talk about pollution, but not climate change or a climate crisis. But as I rewrote these reflections yet again, I was thinking of the final sentence of that essay by Robin Wall Kimmerer we had for our reading. We are called to a movement made of equal parts outrage and love. I have rarely heard Kimmerer speak with outrage, but I remembered an interview from an On Being Cat podcast. Krista Tippett was talking with Colette Pichon Battle, a lawyer and climate justice advocate. Battle grew up in a close-knit Creole community in Louisiana and lost her ancestral home and much of her community in Hurricane Katrina. I have not heard a more eloquent statement of outrage. So, despite advice to the contrary, I'm going to share with you a greatly edited portion of that conversation. I encourage you to listen to all of it. But for now, listen to these words. This is not only a science story. Climate is just this tiny piece of it. It's a human story. It's a story about home. It's a story about belonging. It's about what we know and love and hold dear. This is a moral dilemma we're in. It's not just a scientific one. This is not about greenhouse gas reduction. This is about, do we value people equally? And if we do, we've got some recalibrating to do as a planet. We must have the courage to admit we have taken too much. It's hard living in this country. We just do it unconsciously. As a nation, as a people, we are causing a lot of harm, and we're not paying attention. Our consumption is causing this problem. How much longer do you need me to sit here and be nice about this? I'm Southern. We can go nice and slow for you. But at some point, it feels like you're ignoring me. It feels like you're not listening. And now that's just disrespectful. We are facing a crisis and have maybe 7 years at most to make some corrections. So we've all got to get to it a little quicker. This is lives we're talking about. This is mass migration. This is heat deaths. This is fires. This is storms. Put everything into this. Where is the righteous indignation on this issue? To really admit climate, to really, really admit that you understand what is happening to this planet, it will break your heart. If you don't cry deep, hard tears for the state of this planet and all of the people on it, you don't yet understand the problem. And so once you get to that place, the only thing that can bring you out of that kind of darkness is belief in something greater than yourself. And for me, it is spiritual connection. And then your job becomes less about passing a piece of legislation and more about making a better world. I mean, what do we have to lose? Well, we're going to lose everything. And my last name is Battle. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to fight. I'm supposed to fight, but I'm supposed to fight with tools that build people up, not tools that take people down. And that's love. I come from a people who are energized by joy, and joy comes from love. To combat this thing, I have got to help to bring joy to the community's love of everything that they are. Joy and love. How do we respond to these eloquent, painful words? Though as I write, the response I'm offering feels grossly inadequate for a systemic transformation, I turn to another heroine of mine, Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. She's a marine biologist who waxes eloquent on imagining possibilities, especially of generative ocean farming. She has developed this Venn diagram that I hope to help us determine how we each can contribute, for it will take all of us. We start from what needs to be done, and that need is not hard to find. We assess our talents, our resources, our contacts, and we pay a lot of attention to what kind of activities bring us joy. Where these elements overlap is our climate action. Let us take a moment to think about how this lens might help us determine what our next climate action might be. To end, I share these words from Johnson's and Middlebury commencement speech. Possibility, transformation. What you do matters. How you show up matters. That you show up matters. How you live matters. How you love matters. To whom much is given, much is expected. You must give back. Be tenacious on behalf of life on earth. You were made for this moment. Our closing hymn is number 298 in the Gray Hymnal, Wake Now My Senses. Please stand as you are able. Our closing words are again by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Steve, there's your joy in the sermon. There wasn't much else, right? humans carry gifts of our own. We are scientists and storytellers. We are change makers. We are earth shapers riding on the back of the turtle. We are each called upon to resist the forces of destruction, to give our gifts, to first imagine and then enact a world whole and healed. When the turtles came among us asking for help, we must remember that at the beginning of the world, they were our life raft. And now, so much closer to the end, we must be theirs. Choir, do your magic.
Good job.